Alright, episode 4 of WandaVision is out, and I watched it, as you probably figured. We are now about halfway through the show, not quite if it's 9 episodes, but I'll go with around halfway. This one was weird for me. I'm not gonna lie, I have mixed feelings about this one, and that's kind of how this whole review and thoughts is gonna be in this installment. And yes, I said installment, so if you haven't watched them already, we have 2 other videos on WandaVision reviews with episode 1 and 2 and episode 3 from last week, so be sure to go back and check those out, because like I say in every video, we're making a whole series review, and this is just installment on episode number 4. Here we go. So with this episode, I kind of have to admit that the beginning, the whole intro, was really the best part to me. And that was because for the first time, we actually saw people re-snap back. The same way that they dissolved and kind of faded and snapped away, we saw them snap back. But in Far From Home, I think we see them on video like just kind of blipping back in, like it's like a flash of light. They just kind of blip back in. So this is the first time that we actually see people like re-dissolving back into themselves, which I actually like way more, and I think is a way cooler idea because of how we saw them go away in the first place. And I think it just, I don't know, it's a little bit more serious. It's a little bit more heavy than just kind of watching them snap back, like literally snap back. But anyways, we see Monica Rambeau, the second that Tony snaps everybody back in Endgame, we see her come back in a hospital room right next to the bed that we later find out that it was where her mom, Maria Rambeau, died of cancer while she was snapped away in between those 5 years, which is equally as heartbreaking because that means that her fucking mom had to sit there while dying of cancer and watch her daughter dissolve away from the original Thanos snap, which is pretty dark, pretty heavy. And what it did is it really gave us a cool new perspective of everybody reappearing at that point in Endgame in a hospital nonetheless, which I'm sure is very confusing, and everyone's scrambling around, people asking if they have phones, can I call my wife, I have to speak to my loved ones, have you seen this person, where did you come from, where am I? Like, it was a very chaotic, very heavy, cool opening scene. And obviously because all the other episodes started in a very sitcom way, this was by far the craziest opening yet. Anyways, after that opening scene is where it kind of goes downhill for me. And I think I might catch some of you guys off guard when I say this, but I don't know, the rest of the episode really didn't do it for me. I love Monica Rambeau, and I love how it gave us more of her and her character, more of her backstory, how her mom is the one who really set up S.W.O.R.D., possibly could be like the Nick Fury of S.W.O.R.D., even though we know he is tied to S.W.O.R.D. just at a later date. So I do enjoy everything with her character. I love that they brought Wu back into this, and when we see him and he does the magic card trick and gets the card back up and he's like, FBI. I love that whole scene. I love everything about his character. I love that they brought Darcy back. Darcy is fantastic. I love her in this episode. I love all 3 of them. But my issue with this episode is the fact that we don't, and again, I think I might get some pushback on this, but we don't learn anything new in this episode. This episode is entirely what we've already seen, what we already know, just from a different perspective.
How could you say that? That's not true. It explains how the helicopter got there, who the beekeeper guy was, how Monica Rambeau got in there.
So from the very beginning, we saw the sword symbol in the first episode. Like I said in my first video, I knew that was S.W.O.R.D. We all knew that was S.W.O.R.D. behind this. We saw the S.W.O.R.D. helicopter in the second episode. We saw the S.W.O.R.D. beekeeper in the second episode. And then in the third episode, we saw Geraldine get yeeted out of the bubble. And that the neighbors and the other cast members in this town know something and are a part of something that we don't, but we kind of are aware of. So again, this whole episode was just like,
oh, the helicopter was a S.W.O.R.D. helicopter. Bet you didn't know that.
We did know that.
Oh, the beekeeper, it was a S.W.O.R.D. agent. Bet you didn't know that.
We did know that. I'm not gonna lie, I really enjoyed this episode. I really loved all the new cast members that they brought into it, which is probably the biggest takeaway for me from this episode, but I almost found it a little annoying, and I'm so sorry that I have to say this, because I love this show, and I've been so hyped and so happy about everything, and I still am. I think the show is gonna be fantastic. I think it's going to be literally incredible, and I think it's only gonna get wilder from here. I think that they had to do this episode, but I just think they should have done it in a different way. Reason being, and why I'm saying I found it just a little annoying, was that most of the time, to me, really good storytelling is when the story is catching the audience up to where the people in the story are and explaining what has happened and why. But this episode was the reverse. It was like watching all 3 of the first episodes over again, which is what we saw happen, but we, the audience, were getting S.W.O.R.D. caught up to where we were as a viewer, which is kind of annoying. So shout out to Naruto, This felt like some filler. And I'm sorry, if you loved this episode, if this was your favorite episode yet, awesome. I'm super happy for you. I think this was a great episode. I could totally understand why. But just for me personally, and for Kate and some of the friends that we watched it with, they all said the exact same thing, how we really didn't get anywhere in this episode. We just watched the first 3 episodes over again, and not even in a similar way. We just watched other people watching the episodes that we already watched as TV episodes, the same way that they were presented to us. We just saw it from their perspective. I mean, hell, the episode even ends with Wanda and Vision in the exact same place, in the exact same way that it ends in the last episode. Explain to me how we went anywhere. And then seeing that scene with Wanda using her powers and throwing Geraldine out of the reality, technically Monica, but you know what I mean. I don't know if they thought that was supposed to be some kind of crazy reveal, but we knew that's what happened. We saw Wanda go, and then we saw Geraldine get yeeted out of the bubble. We knew what happened. It was like we saw A to B, okay? We know where A was and we know where B was. And now all of a sudden this episode was like, but I bet you didn't see A.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sometimes in stories, we don't need all the little tidbits in between. You can go from one place to another and the audience is able to understand how it happened. Or at least our imagination can be the thing that fills in those little details. But so long as the A and B is there, we're okay. And let me elaborate on what I mean by them being able to do it a little bit better. I think that this episode should have been another episode in WandaVision, in whatever TV sitcom that Wanda's making. It should have been the 80s episode. And meanwhile, while we're going through the new 80s episode, things could have gotten a little bit crazier, a little bit trippier like they have been, and then it could have cut back to the outside because the last episode ended with Geraldine outside the bubble, so we know that there's people outside, we know that she was found, that there's people coming to her rescue. So it should have been a back and forth sort of thing. It should have been a new episode inside Wanda's show, while jumping back to the sword base in real time. Meanwhile, it could have shown a much more condensed recap of how they got all the people there, how Darcy discovered like the wavelengths and how she could tune the TV to it to find the Wanda show. I feel like they could have just done that a little bit quicker, a little bit more condensed, more A and B type stuff instead of all the little points in between. And then the end of the episode could have been Darcy and the sword people and Wu and all them finding the new episode, the 80s episode, actually getting caught up. So it could have been us watching the new episode take place, so its story actually progressing. Meanwhile, the sword people were discovering all the same stuff and then getting to that same point. So it could have explained all the stuff it explained while furthering the story, is what I'm trying to say. But as far as WandaVision, you know, Wanda and Vision, I don't feel like it really went anywhere with that in the story that we're telling now. Obviously, that's going to happen in episodes 5, 6, 7, 8, possibly 9. I'm hearing it's 9 episodes. And to be honest, I feel like if no one had watched the show so far, you could honestly start them at episode 4 and be like, okay, now watch. And you'd be fine. You would know everything. Obviously, 1, 2, and 3 is all build up to episode 4. All I'm saying is, if somebody had to like speed run this thing in one night, you could start them at episode 4 and they wouldn't be missing anything. They would understand the whole story. Obviously, when the show is over and we have our season finale or series finale, possibly, I'll come back to that and I'll mention if that stands true. But as of right now, I think it was a fine filler episode with some really awesome supporting characters. But guys, that's what all this is about. TVs, movies, film, everything in between. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. How much did you like this episode? What did you think of this episode? Do you agree with me or disagree wholeheartedly and you want to throw things at my face? Let me know in the comments down below, and I will be uploading again this week and then another WandaVision episode next week, as well as streaming all the time, twitch.tv/TripMac. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, guys, please subscribe, leave a like down below. We're trying to get to 10K this year. I'm speaking it into existence. And as always, guys, I will see you very soon.